resolutions that they pass to go apply for and accept the stimulus package anyway, then we deal with that. And the most prudent and fiscally conservative thing that we can do to deal with that is then back out some of the state's GF dollars and replace those with stimulus package dollars. We've identified about $250 million that we believe fits into that, and we're working with some of the lawmakers and their advisors to see if they're comfortable with that also. It's how I will choose to deal with the stimulus package dollars that they believe will be in the state's best interest to accept. I'm going to keep telling them, though, that it is a problem managing the public's expectations when these programs are expanded with these dollars. To assume that in 18 or 24 months the public will accept that we cut off some of the program expansion or that we lay off some of the public employees that will be hired with these dollars. It's a tough thing to manage the public's expectations and to grow government and then think we're going to scale it back in 2 years. Tough thing to swallow.
So you'll accept all the money and then back out some to replace the GF?
Our discussion this afternoon with lawmakers will be on that, on wanting to work with them to get them to see the light in how this is doable. Technically and legally, we believe that it is doable. We can back out state GF funds, replace them with stimulus dollars, and then they, at the end of the day, have fulfilled their resolution of accepting the dollars, and I'll feel better about it because then all those dollars will not just be additional dollars, but they will be replacement. And I do beg to differ with lawmakers who say, well, there aren't really all the strings attached that the administration said there were to these funds. Yeah, there's strings attached to every single federal dollar that comes our way. The biggest, fattest string is that we are tying ourselves to the problem of the nation's growing debt, $11 trillion of debt. That's a big problem, and it's a big fat string to want to be tied to. And look, what this is basically a bailout for many of the states. Look what's happening on a national level with private businesses, where government's coming in to bail them out in order to get in there and have more control of those businesses. Who's to say that the same philosophy isn't going to be used there in terms of bailing out a state and then getting in there and having more control over that state? That doesn't sit well with Alaskans. When you talk specifically about some of the stimulus dollars with obvious strings attached, like the energy building codes that will have to be adopted by local communities who today may not have those energy building codes, but in order to accept the money and spend the money, they'll need the codes. That's another example of a string that is attached. We'd rather see building codes discussed and adopted on a local level and not be mandated by the Fed. Yeah, Bob?
Are you saying that the stimulus is intended to let the federal government get more control of businesses?
The stimulus package? What I inferred was looking at what the bailout packages are on a federal level, getting into businesses, bailing them out, and then government being able to get in there and say, okay, now that you have more federal money, the feds then have more control, more say in how the businesses run. That's what I'm saying.
Do you favor the lack of accountability we had the last 8 years in the previous administration? You're favoring the lack of accountability during the last 8 years?
No, we need accountability in government. Yeah, Rebecca.
What's the difference? You say the biggest string is just tying ourselves to federal money, but for years and years we've been taking billions each year in federal money, not just for the capital budget, but in operating, and it often has strings attached as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So why now is this a problem when it's not?
It was a problem then too, and it was a problem when I first got elected and saw that we still had so many earmarks, for instance, that had been requested under previous administrations, and we scaled that back so drastically that I think we're down to maybe 8 earmarks, is it, Karen? 8. We're here in Alaska, we have an opportunity. We have more of an opportunity here than any other state in the nation to be part of the solution and not part of that problem that you're articulating there, Rebecca. And the solution is development within our own resource-rich state. The only way we're going to get to do that, though, is for the feds to give us that allowance to develop.
Governor, a lot of the lawmakers say that these types of positions you take have everything to do with just stoking your national image. They say it has not as engaged with the legislature this year as you were in the past. And they say that this kind of conversation right here has much more to do with you thinking about national politics than it does the session in 2009 in June.
Absolutely beg to differ with that. I've had the same fiscally conservative philosophy that's been a part of me ever since my PTA days, in city council and mayor, and then as governor. No, I'd be saying the same thing if you would have asked me 10 years ago that growing the nation's debt is a problem and self-sufficiency for a state, development of a state is the solution.
Are you engaged with the legislature as you were last year?
Absolutely, I am.
Do you have the same focus and priorities that you had last year? Can you talk about
I sure do.
You know, in the final week?
My priorities are to progress the state, working with the other branch of government there, the lawmakers, to make sure that we're fulfilling the obligations, that we're meeting the priorities of our constituents. And I believe that our constituents want us to quit spending so much money and want us to develop the resources responsibly in this state. That's my priority. It's been my priority since I was a candidate for governor. Nothing has changed.
Can you tell me about the $250 million that you, in GF, that you're going to back out? Where is that money? What is that money?
Let's go through a little list with you. Grant, no, keep in mind, we haven't talked to lawmakers about the specifics and where we see the $250, but there are replacement dollars that fit in the category of school major maintenance. We have a lot of public safety and justice assistance grants that legally, technically, we can switch out. And some of the operating items in, for instance, child care development block grants. Do you have some more specifics on that?
Well, a big chunk, of course, Governor, is Medicaid, and that's the specific element
that's
of
about
the package.
$138 million. That's a huge one.
Right, but I mean, total, when you look at the total package of stimulus
you're
dollars.
including that in the 250?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've never excluded the discussion of Medicaid. That's always been a part of our discussion.
Governor, in the Matthew Valley, people have had a big outcry against the Senate's capital budget because they feel like they're a political pawn in this with big cuts that affect them.
I can't speak to the lawmakers and how they decided to go in there and cut. And if they harmed a region more than another region, you'll have to ask the lawmakers why they did that. But I don't know why the Mat-Su would feel that they're a pawn. And
well, I guess they got very little in the way of capital projects, and they say that some major projects like the prison, construction for the prison were zeroed out, and they didn't get their requests, and so they feel like they're being targeted because of the legislature's problems with you.
To the prison?
The Mat-Su, of course, for the prison, the bonds did sell, and we do have the debt service in the budget for the prison.
And well, if anybody would have cut out the prison.
There was a press release from John Duffy, just saying that basically all they got in the way of capital projects were minor road projects, and a lot of what they called legacy projects were cut.
So the lawmakers who perhaps cut those, have you spoke to them about why they did cut them? Because I can't speak to what goes into their thinking as they try to have this regional balance of cuts. But go ahead,
and as you heard in Senate Finance, and the legislators have talked about the budget, they have not added legislative projects. So that could be what the Mat-Su is referring to. The only additions really in the CS were out of the cruise ship passenger funds, and those, of course, are limited to certain types of projects. So those are really, with the few minor exceptions, there are very few places where they did legislative.
Lawmakers with their own individual projects have put in nearly $94 million in the cruise ship receipts, and they have their own projects there. But lawmakers haven't added their own constituents' projects in the budget yet. So it's up to them whether they want to put those in there or not. What they have come to us telling us is that they want to, and they've cut the budget that we presented to them, and I say, that's good, that's fine, then we're all on the same page here in wanting to scale back our capital expenditures.
But if it is proposed that if you are fine with cutting that $500 million.
Because the price of a barrel of oil is only $47 today, and I'm not going to be one to assume that it's going to